When you introduce pair programming for the first time, what are you likely to observe? Well, if you're unlucky on a cold start, like to observe, not a lot, because people may fail to connect in a communicative fashion verbally, in which case they really need to. You can't really do pair programming and not talk if you don't know each other. You should be communicating, but non-verbally in some cases, and that's the problem. People might see pairs which use a lot of non-verbal signals and think you don't need to verbalise. Initially, you have to verbalise. So, if people aren't talking initially and they haven't paired before, make sure they do. Break the ice. Think of some technique, tool, tip, whatever you do to break it, because it's important. The next stage you quite often see is for the person typing to be instructed very specifically what to do by the person who's driving. This is quite natural, because what you're applying there is you're not really doing pair programming yet. What you're doing is you're describing verbally what you do as a coder. So it can be frustrating, this. So in this case, what you need to do is rotate really quickly, probably with a Pomodoro timer. What's one of those? Well, one of the problems you have early on in pair programming is people haven't learnt yet when to exchange driver for typer. Now, with a timer, that takes that decision away. So you use a Pomodoro, a tomato timer, an egg timer, something which says, now's the time to swap, and you have to swap now. So you might set it to a particular value. It doesn't really matter what the value is. It's something which, as a coach, you might actually try and experiment with, try and get the right, appropriate thing when they're learning. Now, what you see after then is, what should happen is that you get more non-verbal communication. What happens is a verbal communication moves to a higher level. So they form a common language about objects and start talking in more object-oriented parlance. And you're not going to expect this straight away, because you've got to build up trust and communication between the pair. Now, everybody speaks object-oriented development differently. Everybody has their own particular choices of words. Stuff like UML really helps, the shared language really helps, but you have to establish trust as well, and that takes time. So the next stage you quite often see is that a pair will move and talk about object-oriented parlance. So they'll move and the driver will start thinking more strategically and the typer more tactically. Now at this stage, whoa, there's a slip, and quite well timed, because at this stage, when you first get this, you might not have enough mental capacity to retain the review. Both tactically and strategically, the code needs to be reviewed. Are we doing the right thing for the right reasons at the right time? Is it appropriate? Now, it's not going to happen straight away. You need to expect that even when people start thinking tactically and strategically, actually, it's a new process. They're going to have to think about it. And this thought is going to take mental capacity. And there's going to be nothing left for extraneous stuff. And the extraneous stuff is actually quite important in an Agile team. To make a team, as opposed to a group of pairs, that each pair needs to be according some mental awareness peripherally to what's happening around them. So that's important to switch pairs as well. If you want to build an Agile team, as opposed to a lot of pair programmers, you need to swap partners, and you need each pair to gain a sufficient understanding of each other that they can pay attention to broader issues. So what does that add up for? Well, it's a long process and it takes a lot to learn, but it's worthwhile in the end, because pair programming is a really, really powerful technique when you use it right.